Let me explain how I got here. My name is Sarah Chen, and 3 years ago, I made what seemed like a compassionate decision for my family. My brother Marcus was going through what he called a rough patch in his career. He'd just left his sales job at a mid-level tech company and was exploring opportunities in venture capital, which in Marcus speak meant he was unemployed and networking at expensive restaurants. Just temporarily, he'd said over coffee in November 2021. Until I get my equity compensation from the new firm. You know how these transitions work in finance. Everything's tied up in vesting schedules and signing bonuses. I just need something to cover me for a few months. I'd been skeptical. Marcus had a history of financial mismanagement, designer clothes he couldn't afford, a leased BMW he struggled to pay for, a downtown loft that consumed 60% of his income. But he was my brother. And Mom had called me twice that week, her voice heavy with worry about Marcus not being able to maintain appearances during his job search. Appearances matter in venture capital, Mom had said. He can't show up to meetings looking like he's struggling. So I did what any big sister might do. I added Marcus as an authorized user on my American Express Black card. Not my business card. I kept that separate and sacred. But my personal Centurion card, the one I'd qualified for after my company's Series C funding round, brought my personal net worth into a range that made premium credit card companies very interested in my business. Just for emergencies, I told him when I handed him the card. Business dinners during your job search. Maybe a suit if you need one for interviews. Nothing crazy. Marcus had hugged me. Actually hugged me. You're saving my life, Sarah. I swear 3 months maximum. The moment my signing bonus hits, I'm paying you back every cent. That was November 2021. It was now March 2025. The 3 months had stretched into 3 years. The emergencies had evolved from interview suits to bottle service at clubs, from business dinners to weekend trips to Vegas, from professional necessities to a lifestyle Marcus had convinced himself he deserved. I watched it happen gradually through my monthly statements. At first, it was reasonable. $800 at a men's clothing store, $200 at a steakhouse, $150 for dry cleaning. The kind of expenses that made sense for someone trying to land a high-level job. Then it crept upward. A $3,000 weekend in Miami. A $1,800 dinner at a Michelin-starred restaurant. A $5,000 consulting conference in Cabo that I later discovered from his Instagram was just a party weekend with his college friends. By 2023, Marcus was charging an average of $8,000 to $12,000 per month. In 2024, it had escalated to $15,000 to $20,000 per month. Designer watches. First-class flights. Hotel suites. Entire wardrobes from luxury boutiques. I should have said something. I know that now. But every time I considered it, something held me back. Maybe it was guilt. I was successful and Marcus was struggling. Maybe it was family obligation. Mom had always taught us that family takes care of family. Maybe it was just avoidance. Confrontation has never been my strength. And honestly, I could afford it. My company, a healthcare data analytics firm I'd founded in 2018, had grown beyond my wildest projections. We'd secured Series D funding in 2023 at a $340 million valuation. My personal net worth had crossed 8 figures. What was $180,000 a year to someone in my position? But it wasn't really about the money. It was about the principle. And more than that, it was about the gratitude, or the complete lack of it. Marcus never said thank you. Not once after that initial hug in 2021. He never acknowledged the privilege he was enjoying. He never mentioned paying me back. The card had simply become his card in his mind, an extension of his own financial resources, something he was entitled to. Worse, he'd developed an attitude about it. At family gatherings, he'd casually mention his expensive purchases with a smug satisfaction that made my jaw clench. He'd talk about his Amex Black card, never Sarah's card that she graciously lets me use, but his card as though he'd qualified for it himself. Yeah, I just put it on the Black card, he'd say casually, pulling out my card to show his friends. The points are incredible. The points that were accumulating in my account. The credit limit increase that reflected my income and creditworthiness. The exclusive airport lounges he accessed through my membership. My parents thought it was wonderful that Marcus was back on his feet. They praised his expensive taste, his luxury lifestyle, his apparent success. They had no idea he was funding it entirely through my credit line. I'd tried to hint at it once during a family dinner in 2023. Marcus seems to be doing really well, I'd said carefully. His new venture capital position must be paying incredibly well. Oh, Marcus doesn't like to talk about money, Mom had said quickly. He's humble like that. But yes, we're so proud of how he's thriving. Marcus had caught my eye across the table and smirked. He knew exactly what I was doing, and he knew I wouldn't push it further. Because that would mean admitting to our parents that I'd been funding his lifestyle, which would mean admitting that Marcus wasn't the successful venture capitalist he pretended to be. So I stayed quiet. And Marcus kept spending. The final straw came in the form of Mom's 65th birthday dinner. She'd wanted something intimate, just immediate family at Orchid, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Dad had made the reservation months in advance. It was supposed to be a celebration of Mom, a lovely evening with the people she loved most. I should have known Marcus would find a way to make it about himself. I arrived at Orchid at 7 p.m. sharp, dressed in a simple black dress that cost more than Marcus probably realized. $4,000 from a designer boutique, but understated enough to look almost ordinary. I'd learned that true wealth whispers. Marcus arrived 20 minutes late, dressed in what I immediately recognized as a new Tom Ford suit. Price tag, approximately $6,000. I'd seen the charge on my statement 2 weeks ago. Tom Ford Beverly Hills, $6,247.88. Sorry, Marcus said, not sounding sorry at all. Client meeting ran late. You know how it is. He didn't have clients. I checked. Marcus's venture capital position was actually a commission-based business development role at a small investment firm where he'd closed exactly 0 deals in 2 years. But he liked the title and the business card, so he kept the job and kept pretending. Dinner started pleasantly enough. We ordered wine, a $400 bottle that Dad insisted on, despite Mom's protests that it was too expensive. We toasted Mom's birthday. We made small talk about her recent trip to visit Aunt Linda, about Dad's golf game, about the weather. Then Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grinned. Sorry, work stuff. Just need to handle this real quick. He stepped away from the table and I watched through the restaurant's glass walls as he paced outside, gesticulating wildly with his phone pressed to his ear. When he returned 15 minutes later, he was practically glowing with self-satisfaction. Big deal closing, he announced, settling back into his chair. Can't share details obviously, but let's just say Q2 is looking very strong. Dad beamed. That's my boy. I always knew you'd make it in finance. Mom reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. I sipped my wine and said nothing. The appetizers arrived, oysters, tuna tartare, truffle gnocchi. The conversation flowed easily, lubricated by wine and the warm glow of family celebration. I started to relax. Maybe tonight would be fine. Maybe Marcus would behave. Then came the moment that changed everything. We were halfway through our entrees when Dad mentioned something about his retirement planning. He was concerned about market volatility, about whether he and Mom had saved enough, about the rising cost of healthcare. I'm just worried, Dad said quietly, cutting into his ribeye. We've been careful, but everything's so expensive now. Healthcare, property taxes, everything. You guys will be fine, Marcus said confidently. You've got solid investments and the house is paid off. Plus, you've always been good savers. Then he turned to me with a smirk that I'd seen too many times before. The smirk that said he was about to say something cruel disguised as a joke. The smirk that meant he felt powerful and wanted everyone to know it. Unlike some people at this table, Marcus said, his voice dripping with fake concern. Some of us aren't quite as good with money management. I felt my spine stiffen, but I kept my expression neutral. Oh, come on, Sarah, Marcus continued, warming to his theme. He leaned back in his chair with the casual confidence of someone who thought he was delivering hard truths. We all know you're struggling. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Startups fail all the time. The important thing is that you tried. Mom looked concerned. Sarah, honey, are you having financial trouble? Why didn't you say something? I'm not, I started, but Marcus cut me off. She's too proud to admit it, he said, shaking his head with false sympathy. But the signs are all there. Living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car, never taking vacations. Classic struggling entrepreneur behavior. My tiny apartment was a 2,000 square foot penthouse in the city's most exclusive building. My old car was a 3-year-old Tesla Model S that I'd paid cash for because I found the idea of car payments wasteful. And I didn't take vacations because I was building a company, not because I couldn't afford them. But Marcus didn't know any of that because Marcus had never asked. He'd never visited my apartment. He'd never asked about my company beyond vague pleasantries. He'd never shown any genuine interest in my life. Marcus, I said calmly, I don't think. Look, I'm not judging, he interrupted, holding up his hands in mock defense. We all go through rough patches. I went through mine, remember? Lost my job, had to rebuild everything from scratch. It's hard. But I got through it and you will too. The irony was staggering. Marcus, who had gotten through it by living off my credit card for 3 years, was now giving me a pep talk about financial resilience. The key is not being too proud to ask for help, he continued, and I watched Dad nodding along, Mom's face creasing with worry. Family is here for family. If you need money, Sarah, just ask. We'll figure something out. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, not yet, but cracked. 3 years of watching my statements balloon with his charges. 3 years of being treated like an ATM with no password protection. 3 years of watching him build a luxury lifestyle on my dime while taking none of the responsibility and all of the credit. And now this. Public humiliation disguised as concern. A lecture on financial management from someone who was literally living off my charity. An offer of help from someone who owed me close to $500,000 at this point. Actually, Marcus, I said, my voice perfectly level, I need to correct something. He waved his hand dismissively. Sarah, there's no shame in. You're broke anyway, he suddenly announced, his voice rising with the kind of aggressive confidence that comes from too much wine and too much ego. Let's be honest here. You're living paycheck to paycheck. That startup of yours. It's clearly not making money. You've been in growth mode for 7 years. At some point you have to admit that growth mode is just a fancy term for hemorrhaging cash. The table went silent. A waiter who had been approaching with fresh bread quietly retreated. I could see other diners at nearby tables glancing over, drawn by Marcus's raised voice. You're broke, Marcus repeated, leaning forward. And that's fine. That's reality for most people. But stop pretending otherwise. Stop acting like you're some successful entrepreneur when we all know the truth. Dad looked uncomfortable. Mom was clutching her napkin, her birthday dinner ruined by the sudden tension. And Marcus looked triumphant, like he'd finally said something that needed to be said, like he'd done me a favor by exposing what he thought was the truth. I took a slow sip of my wine. Set the glass down carefully. Reach for my phone. I replied calmly, I would later tell my therapist about this moment. Not because I'm a saint, but because I'd spent 3 years preparing for this conversation in my head. I knew exactly what I would say when the moment came. If that's what you think, I said quietly. My fingers moved across my phone screen with practiced ease. I navigated to my texts, found my American Express concierge contact, a direct line I had as a Centurion card member, and typed out a message I'd mentally composed 100 times over the past year. Cancel authorized user Marcus Chen, card ending 8847. Effective immediately. Confirm when complete. I hit send. The message showed as delivered. Then I set my phone face down on the table, picked up my fork and took a bite of my sea bass. It was perfectly cooked, I noticed distantly. Orchid really did have exceptional chefs. Sarah. Mom said tentatively. Are you all right? I'm fine, Mom, I said. Happy birthday. I'm sorry Marcus is making this about something other than celebrating you. Marcus laughed, actually laughed. See? This is what I mean. Deflection. Classic defense mechanism. Sarah, I'm trying to help you here. Sometimes you need someone to give you a reality check. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Authorized user Marcus Chen removed from account ending 8847. Effective immediately. Card will be declined on any pending or future transactions. Confirmation code, AX2891CC. Is there anything else I can assist you with? I typed back, no thank you. That's everything. Then I looked up at Marcus, who was still talking, gesturing with his wine glass, explaining to our parents why tough love was sometimes necessary for family members who refused to see reality. The thing is, he was saying, Sarah's always been stubborn. Even as kids, she couldn't admit when she was wrong. And now, with her business failing, she's doubling down instead of cutting her losses. It's sad, really. I let him finish. There was no point interrupting. In about 5 minutes, reality was going to interrupt for me. We made it through the rest of dinner with strained conversation. Mom tried to steer things back to neutral territory. A story about her book club, a question about Dad's upcoming golf tournament. I participated politely, answered questions, smiled at appropriate moments. Marcus kept shooting me looks that mixed pity with satisfaction. He thought he'd won something. He thought he'd finally said what everyone was thinking. He thought he'd established himself as the successful sibling, the one who had figured it out, the one who could afford to offer help to his struggling sister. The bill arrived. Dad reached for it instinctively, but Marcus waved him off with grand generosity. Please, Dad. It's Mom's birthday. Let me get this. He pulled out his wallet with a flourish and extracted the familiar black card. My black card. The card that was now, as of approximately 10 minutes ago, completely useless to him. This is on me, Marcus announced. Family takes care of family, right? He handed the card to the waiter with the casual confidence of someone who had done this 100 times before. As he had. On my dime. For 3 years. The waiter walked away. Marcus leaned back in his chair, radiating satisfaction. So Sarah, he said, when you're ready to talk seriously about your situation, I'm here. I've got some connections at smaller companies. Nothing prestigious but stable, you know? Places that might need someone with your skill set. Project manager roles, maybe analyst positions. The pay won't be what you're used to, but at least it would be steady income. I was going to be a project manager. At a small company. After founding and scaling a $340 million venture-backed healthcare analytics firm. The absurdity was almost beautiful. That's thoughtful of you, I said neutrally. I mean it, Marcus continued. I hate seeing you struggle. And I know pride makes it hard to accept help, but sometimes. The waiter returned. His expression was professionally neutral, but I caught the slight hesitation in his step, the way he positioned himself slightly back from the table. I'm very sorry, sir, he said quietly to Marcus, but this card has been declined. The table froze. Marcus blinked. That's not possible. Try it again. I've tried it twice, sir. The card is being declined. Do you have another form of payment? I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. He grabbed the card back, stared at it as though it had personally betrayed him, then looked at me with dawning understanding. Sarah, he said slowly. Did I what? I asked innocently. The card. Did you cancel the card? Oh, I said as though just remembering. Yes, I did. About 10 minutes ago, actually. Right around the time you were explaining how broke I am. Marcus's mouth opened and closed. Mom looked confused. Dad was staring at the black card in Marcus's hand with sudden comprehension. Wait, Dad said. Marcus, is that Sarah's card? It's complicated, Marcus said quickly. It's actually very simple, I corrected. 3 years ago, Marcus asked to be an authorized user on my personal American Express card for a few months while he transitioned jobs. I said yes because he's family. He's been using it ever since. For everything, apparently. I pulled out my phone and opened my American Express app. 3 years of statements, available at my fingertips. Let's see, I said scrolling. Last month alone, $18,000. Month before that, $22,000. Average monthly spend over the past 3 years. Approximately $15,000. Total, $540,000. Give or take. The number hung in the air like smoke. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Dad sat back heavily in his chair. $500,000, I continued calmly. That's what my broke lifestyle has funded for my brother over the past 3 years. The Tom Ford suits. The bottle service in Miami. The first-class flights. The Rolex on your wrist right now. Yes, Marcus, I saw that charge. $14,000 last June. Marcus's face had gone from white to red. You said I could use it. For emergencies, I replied. For 3 months. While you found a job. Not for 3 years of living like a trust fund kid while lecturing me about financial responsibility. I was going to pay you back, he said desperately. When? You told me 3 months in 2021. It's been 3 years. You've never mentioned paying me back. Not once. You haven't even said thank you since the day I gave you the card. That's not fair. What's not fair? I interrupted, my voice still calm but now carrying an edge. Is spending someone's money for 3 years and then publicly humiliating them by calling them broke. What's not fair is taking advantage of family generosity and then acting like you're the successful one. What's not fair is offering to help me find a job when you're literally living off my charity. The waiter cleared his throat uncomfortably. Sir, about the bill. Dad reached for his wallet. I'll cover it. No, I said firmly. I've got it. I pulled out my own card. My actual card, the one that hadn't been in Marcus's wallet, and handed it to the waiter. He practically fled. The silence at the table was deafening. Marcus was staring at the tablecloth, his jaw clenched. Mom was crying quietly. Dad looked angry, not at me I realized, but at Marcus. $500,000, Dad said quietly. Marcus, what the hell were you thinking? I was going to pay her back, Marcus repeated weakly. With what money? Dad demanded. You just told us Sarah's the one who's broke. If you believed that, how were you planning to pay back $500,000? Marcus had no answer for that. My phone buzzed. A text from my Amex concierge. Payment processed. Receipt sent to your email. Thank you for dining at Orchid. The waiter returned with my card and the receipt. I signed it, added a generous tip. None of this was his fault, and stood up. Mom, I said gently, I'm sorry your birthday dinner ended like this. You deserve better. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll plan something nice, just the two of us. Okay. Mom nodded, still crying. I looked at Marcus. He couldn't meet my eyes. For what it's worth, I said, I don't regret helping you. That's what family does. What I regret is that you never appreciated it. You took it for granted, took me for granted, and then tried to humiliate me for having the resources you've been living off of. I picked up my purse and turned to leave. Then I paused and turned back. Oh, and Marcus? That struggling startup of mine? We closed our Series D funding last year at a $340 million valuation. My personal stake is worth approximately $85 million on paper. We're projecting $200 million in revenue this year. The company you thought was failing employs 400 people and was just named one of the fastest growing private companies in America. I watched his face as the numbers registered. The confusion, the denial, the slowly dawning horror. That tiny apartment you mentioned? It's 2,000 square feet in the Meridian Tower. I paid $4.2 million for it in cash. The old car is a Tesla I bought outright because I think car loans are a waste of money. And I don't take vacations because I'm building something I actually care about, not because I can't afford them. I let that sink in for a moment. You were living off my charity, Marcus. For 3 years. And instead of being grateful, instead of being humble, instead of at least being quiet about it, you decided to publicly call me broke. I smiled then, but it wasn't a kind smile. So yes, I canceled the card. Effective immediately. Every pending charge, every subscription you set up, every automatic payment, all declined. Your gym membership, your Netflix, your meal delivery service, that car detailing subscription you started last month. All of it. Declined. As for the $540,000 you owe me, consider it a gift. I'm not going to ask you to pay it back because frankly I don't need it and you clearly can't afford it. But that gift comes with a price. Don't ever lecture me about money again. Don't ever call me broke again. And if you ever want to have any kind of relationship with me going forward, the first words out of your mouth better be, I'm sorry, and thank you. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder. Enjoy the rest of Mom's birthday dinner. I'm sure you'll figure out how to pay for your valet. Then I walked out of Orchid, out into the cool March evening, and I didn't look back. My phone started buzzing before I'd even reached my car. First Marcus, then Mom, then Marcus again. I silenced it and drove home in blissful quiet. Later that night, sitting in my tiny apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, I poured myself a glass of wine and finally checked my messages. 17 missed calls from Marcus. 9 from Mom. 3 from Dad. And 1 text message that made me smile. From Dad, I'm proud of you. You handled that with more grace than he deserved. Call your mother tomorrow. She's upset but not at you. She's upset that Marcus lied to us about his success. We had no idea. I'm sorry we didn't see it. Love you. I texted back, love you too, Dad. I'll call Mom in the morning. Then I opened my American Express app one final time, looking at the authorized users list. Just my name. As it should have been all along. The next morning I woke to an email from Marcus. Not a text, an email. Formal. Distant. Sarah, I've been thinking about last night. I may have been harsh, but you overreacted. Canceling the card in public was cruel and vindictive. You embarrassed me in front of our parents. I think we both need space to cool down. When you're ready to apologize for how you handled things, we can talk. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Some people never learn. And some bridges are better burned. 3 days later, Mom called. We talked for 2 hours. She apologized for not knowing, for not asking more questions, for assuming Marcus's lifestyle was self-funded. We made plans for a spa day, just the two of us, to properly celebrate her birthday. Dad called the next day. He'd apparently had a long conversation with Marcus about responsibility, gratitude, and the difference between helping family and enabling them. And Marcus? I didn't hear from him again for 6 months. When I finally did, it was a short text. I'm sorry. You were right. I took advantage. I'm working on being better. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I understand now. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with it for a few days, thinking about family, about grace, about second chances. Eventually I texted back. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. Let's take things slow. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. Because that's the thing about family. You can set boundaries. You can demand respect. You can cut off toxic behavior without cutting off the person entirely. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, and letting them see exactly what they took for granted. Marcus learned that lesson the hard way at a valet stand outside Orchid, when his card declined and his carefully constructed facade crumbled. I learned that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. That helping family doesn't mean enabling bad behavior. And that sometimes, the most satisfying sound in the world is the quiet beep of a credit card being declined.